Welcome to the Radiant Edge podcast, the podcast for soul-led experts building bold, aligned businesses. Hi, I'm Wendy Burge, and I'm here to help you create a business that feels just as good on the inside as it looks on the outside, because you're not here just to sell, you're here to lead movements, shape ideas, and amplify your radiance. Hi, welcome back to episode 3. This episode is called Packaging Your Knowledge, How and Why to Get Paid for What You Know, Not Just What You Do. This is one of my absolute favorite topics. I came up with this little tagline, how to get paid for what you know, not just what you do, actually a number of years ago when I was out networking. And it just rolled off my tongue. You know, we spend hours and hours and hours trying to perfect the perfect little elevator pitch. And that one just fell out one day. And the response I got back was phenomenal. We could only dream to have that every single time. And it really lent itself to the way I work with clients and the premise of why it's important to get paid at a certain stage of your career for what you know, not just the time of how you do something. So this particular episode, I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive into what this means, how you can start shifting your mindset into looking at when it is that you are going to start cultivating these ideas of packaging knowledge, what's the perfect time, and as well, some key takeaways that I have found in helping people develop their own processes or intellectual property and programs over the past decade or so. And it is really one of my favorite places because this is where people's brilliance shine. This is the spot that people often do not see how valuable they really are. So let's step back a little bit. When is it time for you to consider building out a knowledge base inside of your experience as an expert? I would say that if you have been in your industry for quite some time and you can walk into a situation and you can immediately identify problems without a whole lot of digging around, you start to see repeating patterns. When you have become experienced enough in solving a specific kind of problem, you're going to see the same types of issues or patterns that are key indicators that this problem exists. I have seen this done inside of just about every possible industry I've worked with. So it's not something that's exclusive to an industry or a type of expertise. It really is the way our own brains think about things when we become familiar. There's a level of mastery here. You're not just proficient, you're masterful at this point. You can step in and you're immediately identifying the root cause of the issue just in the conversation you're having with the prospect or the client, the person who holds the problem. And they often may not even realize why the problem's happening. They may not understand how deep they are in that problem. But from your side of the fence, in your own experience, you have seen this many times over. So case in point is when I have people sit down with me, I can hear immediately disconnects between their offers and their messaging and their ability to communicate clearly and establish their value just by some key indicators of how they're speaking and also the way they've set things up within their marketing and sales processes. So in my experience, because of that, it allowed me to turn around and start building out processes that are my own or are part of my own Radiant Edge methodology that allow me to systematically go through these particular key points that I know help transition and transfer that solution more effectively, and it allows me to hone in. So transferring that knowledge to you when you're looking at somebody else's situation because of your experience, you're automatically jumping into diagnostic mode in your thinking. And that diagnostic thinking allows you to, again, recognize patterns, understand there are what's called the perfect storm of scenarios that sets that person up to find themselves in that particular problem. The challenge often is they're many times not aware of how bad the problem is, how did they get themselves into this problem, and where this problem impacts the rest of the work or into the rest of their processes or into the rest of their department or team. So it's really important that we step back, and the first thing we do is not assume they understand. That's why we want to stay curious. So if that is where you've been working for a few years as an expert in your field, and you can stay in that state of curiosity, and you're like, here's that issue again, I keep seeing it. That pattern is the key indicator for you to consider building the diagnostic framework. So if your client did one thing to fix this issue, what immediately would clear up a number of the symptomology from the problem at a base foundational level. And when thinking about it this way, this foundational issue often is challenging for people because there is a disconnect between where they are and what got them there. There's a disconnect between foundations and people who've stepped in to start building on top of broken foundations. There's often a disconnect for people who are not resourced to take somebody to that next level, that organization, that business, even their own personal development, because there's something missing. And in your experience, if they just address that missing key piece, that's the thing that makes all the difference. I call it the linchpin. If they pulled that linchpin, a lot of these things would go away. And in my last episode of the Radiant Edge podcast, I made this comment, and I will say it over and over again. I am convinced there aren't really problems. There's just a lack of awareness, a lack of resources, or a lack of skill sets. And most of the time, once we identify that with somebody, it is transformative in the way that they see the situation, because now you've created this value by stating you don't have to stay here. I'm witnessing what's going on for you, and right now there is a solution out, and I know that next step. And if this is truly the place you've been working for a while, which I find a lot of my clients come to me and they're like, how do I do this? This is what I keep seeing. I just don't know how to package it. That ability to take that knowledge and now titrate it into steps or stages or a process that's repeatable and marketable is really the thing that transforms your business into allowing you from trading time and dollars per hour into a more marketable process that has its own legs, that stands alone, and it allows you, the expert, to separate yourself from being just the service provider. It allows you to be an authority in this space over a solution. And that is really key and critical. So your experience is enough when you start to understand there's patterns and processes and start picking up on them. We're going to talk about how to reverse engineer this now. Often clients will say, Wendy, I'm borrowing from somebody else's work. I know how to do this because I've got degrees in this, or I've taken this methodology, or I've got this certification in these modalities. My feeling about this is you're not actually taking from somebody else's work. When you are packaging this up, you're enhancing and moving your industry forward as a mentor and teacher for that next generation within your industry. So those teachers that you've learned from, those mentors, those business advisors, those leaders have really been on the forefront when you were coming up through your industry. They're standing on the shoulders of their mentors. So we take a stand for our experience and for future generations in our industries to contribute back, allowing others to learn and grow. And it's a real reciprocative process to be able to say, I've been in this experience many times over, and now I want to contribute my voice. I want to lend to the foundations of an industry. And I call this disruptive contribution. Disruptive contribution is a term that I coined because what it allows you to do is continue to add to the conversation within an industry of building solutions and continually to evolve and transform and elevate the way that something operates, works through awareness, through systems, whatever that is that you're doing, but your disruptive contribution becomes the foundation for that next level of emergence inside of your industry as a leader. So this is fantastic news if you're sitting here going, wow, maybe it's time for me to do this. What do I need to do next? A couple of key core pieces when you start to build out your own process is you're creating a new value asset when you begin to package up your knowledge. This contains incredible value for people because now you're separating yourself from your time. The departure here is once you begin to see how to take the knowledge and transform it in its delivery processes, your knowledge becomes this incredibly valuable asset. And it is the emergence of being able to scale. Instead of just being a solution provider, you become a business owner who can scale through the knowledge that's proprietary to you. So how do you take this knowledge and start to put it into a container that makes sense? Number one is keep it simple. Always create a problem solution approach. And inside of your problem, don't make the problem so complex. The challenge is, and if you remember from what I said last time, is that many of us are walking around holding on to this 400 level textbook of knowledge and we're dropping it at the foot of a freshman and they just don't understand. So if you start to create a process or a knowledge base offer that is so complex, it's very hard for somebody on the other side listening to you to understand how to apply it. So scale it back. What is the greatest, most efficient outcome your solution can provide for an immediate issue? Start with the immediacy. Move somebody from an immediate problem into a solution that they are missing to utilize that solution as a first next step into working with you. This helps you transition from selling your time into selling a solution. So pick the simplest solution that you know immediately that your particular buyer definitely struggles with. I will say this, in my experience of looking at hundreds and hundreds of offers and helping people build them, most of the time this initial solution is very base foundational. I'm going to say that again. The solution that you first want to start with is almost base foundational. It's almost like they should already know this. It's that old adage, common knowledge is not so common, right? So get to the base solution, because many times people have skipped through problems. They maybe been asked to pick up and carry a solution forward, but they just don't have the experience in evaluating the situation appropriately. They maybe haven't been within that organization long enough to understand its foundations. Let's go back to you. You're going to have some key elements to start with that are foundational to creating that next stage. What are some foundational issues that you see that people need to address before they move forward on building anything stronger, greater, that supports whatever that bigger outcome is? Like if this problem was solved, what's the bigger thing that this buyer would want? What's the bigger challenge this client would want to be dealing with or working on? And typically it's a goal. They want to grow their organization. They want to lead with more effectiveness. They want to have a better culture and team experience. They want to have better operations within their organization or their clinic or their practice. What is that foundation? So the best experience and the best framework I've ever seen where this makes most sense, and I'm going to stick with the educational metaphor because I find it really anchors quickly, is, as I said, you're speaking at a 400 level textbook. You're that expert mentor, guide, you're that professor. But we need to go back to the foundations of 100. What is that foundational 100 solution that would really identify some key foundational problems? It's something very simple that's broken. Start there, and once that solution has been identified, implemented, and executed on, and you have some direct feedback from that particular buyer or client, then you can say, here's the next step. That becomes the 200 level courses that you would see inside of a university setting, right? So you're building your offers more like a designated course structure where you'd have 100, 200, 300, and 400 level. And to be honest, your clients are never really going to be at a 400 level. They shouldn't, because you're really then talking to your peers. What you're going to be looking at is foundationally at 100 and 200 and 300. What are those problems that they're missing at those different stages? Start with the beginning. 100 level problems are often the things that we would tie into assessments or inventories or indexing of a situation. That's what makes a really great starter offer for most people. So if we can tie that back into a solution for the initial engagement of a new prospect, it makes it a lot easier for them. Instead of you walking and saying, hey, I can fix everything and here's the kitchen sink, you are going to shift the conversation to start at that very beginning. So your job is to identify those key pillars in this initial assessment stage. How do we set up the steps within that? I have seen people build step-by-step processes when the solution requires more technical or analytical or problem solving that is systematic. So this might be in technology, it might be in medical sciences, it might be in telecommunications. It's anything that feels very technical. It must require step by step. Without the steps, the building blocks can't be built. That's the first stage. Or if you are working within leadership, culture, HR, personal or professional development, or any of the creative arts, you will actually have stages or pillars, meaning you will need each one of these stages or pillars inside of generating the outcome, but you may not necessarily need them in the same order. The challenge for people is that they're trying to squeeze things into the wrong framework. So identify the way your industry thinks. Do they work through pillars, through modules of processes that really require awareness and integration? Or is it more technical where it's a step-by-step integration, adaptation, execution, refinement? That makes sense for specific industries and may not make sense for others. Once you've identified if you're using steps or pillars or stages, you will want to identify what the direct outcome is, what the benefit is, how they get it, and specifically why do they need it. My last note to this, and then we'll wrap this conversation up, is I would probably limit the amount of steps, stages, and or pillars. I would probably go no more than 5. I would keep it simple, 3 to 5 steps, so that it feels doable, approachable, and reasonable to the buyer. Packaging your knowledge allows you to really transition from being paid for what you do and now allows you to get paid for what you know and become even more valuable. I really hope that this has helped you identify, number 1, when you're ready to begin packaging your knowledge. Number 2, how to discern why you should be doing it. You know, you're an industry leader, you're standing on the shoulders of your teachers, and it's time for you to contribute that information as well. And number 3, identify what industry you're in using steps or pillars or stages, and based on a model that we're all familiar with, an educational system, identify some key foundational problems. It's the best place to start. I hope this has been informative. I look forward to speaking with you on the next episode, and thank you for joining me.